the i-MiEV is definitely going to have its target demographic. Somebody that likes quirky small cars is going to be slathering themselves over this. There's no doubt. And the size really doesn't bother me because let's face it, I understand the market for which this was designed. Now, really, is that going to translate for Americans very well? Not really. Okay, let's just go over this. The i-MiEV was the i-car in Japan, okay? This was designed and made in 2004 and 5, and then in production in 2006. So in 2008, Mitsubishi said, we need to do something different. We need to make an electric vehicle, and they turned the i-car into the i-MiEV.
Ah.
So this essentially is a 10-year-old car. What do you think of the suspension up front?
It's got a pretty tough tubular steel frame.
Yes, it does. It's got a 21 millimeter sway bar. And this is a strut-based front suspension here. And there is no aluminum in the frame, body panels, anything. This is all stamped steel. Up front, there is an electric power steering rack, an electric brake booster, obviously. It is also water cooled for the electric motor in the back, so there is some plumbing for that.
Where's the AC compressor?
It must be up front.
We'll have to have a look at under the bonnet.
Yeah, we'll take a look at the bonnet when we drop it down. I know you can't wait to get your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, we like talking about tires, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Especially when they're Dunlop and Savis.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. What kind of width we run here? These look wide.
These are 145, 65, 15s.
Wow. These look more narrow than the ones that are on your motorcycle.
They are. Even the rear one's more narrow.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this thing, the tires are staggered on here, and it's because, why are they staggered?
Because it's got so much torque to the rear.
That you need a wired contact patch?
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
More stability in the corners.
Well, you don't want oversteer.
You don't want to weight to transfer in the back.
You don't want snap oversteer.
No, definitely not.
This is where all the action's at.
Oh, there's a lot going on back here.
We have the Dion rear suspension. This is not very common at all. A lot of people call it the Celine Dion suspension.
It looks like 1970 muscle car suspension or NASCAR. All I need is a freaking wedge. They can put some wedge into it for around the corners.
Yeah, well, you know, when this suspension was created in the 1890s, the Dion tube, rather, not the complete suspension, but this concept.
You say it didn't rust?
No, it hasn't rusted yet, but it's a 2016. So it probably hasn't seen a winter.
I thought it was 1800s.
Oh, no, they didn't take this from the 1800s and put it on
they
here.
didn't take it off a buggy?
No, this is modern Dion tube. So there are some things, there's some reasons why they use this back here. One is for space, second is for weight, and it has the advantage of having no camber changes under load. It will not affect the contact patch when either side is compressed, either together or individually. The second thing is it's super easy to figure out spring rates and damping rates on this thing, even though you wouldn't know it when you drove it. But you could literally swap this shock and spring off this car in probably about 10 minutes. It's ridiculous. We have a single speed transmission and an electric motor. How much horsepower does it make?
About 10.
No. Makes 66 horsepower. Oof. What about the torques?
About 3.
No, 145.
Wow.
That's what makes it feel more lively than it is the torques. Now,
is it a CVT transmission?
No, it's a single.
Is it paddle shifted?
No, you can't paddle shift the single speed transmission. The maximum RPM rotation is 9,900 RPMs, and it gives you that whirring sound that you've always wanted.
That probably sounds like straight cut gears.
It does sound like straight cut gears, especially when you're riding in the back hatch. Now, the main thing here is, yes, it doesn't make a ton of power, but because of the weight at about 2,550 pounds, it doesn't need a ton of power and weight to haul this thing around. The bigger issue is the battery capacity. With a 60-mile range, you know, you're handicapped by that. You can't do too much. But, you know, fast forward 10 years, this is what you're going to be looking at. I think the smart people, and I hate to say this about a new car, is if I just went online today because I wanted to see the resale value and the used market, this is where you buy it. I found the first top 5 on the list all had under 10,000 miles on it, and they were all under $8,000. So you could get a 2-year-old version of this car for $8,000 instead of 25 new. And if you live in the city, why not?
Well, the way I look at it is you look at the cost when it's new and the cost when it's used, and if it dropped that much, something tells you it's a pile of crap.
That or nobody's buying them. So both the charging ports are, the passenger rear is your standard 8 amp or 12 amp charging port. So if you have an 8 amp outlet, it takes 22 hours to charge this. If you have a 12 amp outlet, it takes 12. The high speed charger or the 240 volt charger that you would need in your home charges it in 6 hours. So that makes a lot more sense, I think.
Makes zero sense.
But at least you can come in and charge the thing halfway in 3 hours and be out about and going on in town. When I charged it, it took 20 hours, and you were pretty much screwed the whole day.
When I go to the gas station, it takes me about 5 minutes to put 15 gallons in, and I can go 300 miles or more.
That's a really good point. Now, do you think somebody that wants an electric car cares about how long it takes to fill up a gasoline car?
No.
No, they don't. They want this. There's something that Mitsubishi is completely honest about with this car. And
what's that?
This is the reality of electric cars. I understand your point. Makes no sense. Just get a gasoline car. We're in this transition period, right? There's really no point of this yet. But there's another negative part about electric cars. Mitsubishi says at 100,000 miles, this battery is only 70% efficient as it was new. So you're losing 30% off that top.
Well, I read on the forums people are having problems at 20, 30,000 miles.
With efficiency?
Mm-hmm.
Like how much?
I don't know. I didn't
10%?
read that much.
Okay. Well, from the factory claims, you're going to lose 30% at 100,000 miles. That's a lot on a 60-mile range vehicle. Now, that's not just this car. Almost all your battery packs are going to suffer severe degradation over time. I mean,
Right.
how many people with phones, all our phones have lithium-ion batteries in them. How many people with regular modern smartphones have their batteries last more than 2 years like they were when they were new? Nobody, if you're using it every day. It's just the way the battery packs work. Not only that, laptop batteries, those are, a smaller version of what's in here with a lot of software to control it. You're lucky to get 2 to 3 years out of a lithium-ion battery pack in laptops. So what they're doing in this car is it's a glorified monster scale version of that with a bunch of software to control the state of charge and longevity and health. You're gonna lose battery efficiency. We're in the i-MiEV. Let's start it up. It has a key that you actually turn like a normal car, except you don't hear it start. Go figure, it's all electric. It's pretty quiet. Why is it quiet?
Because it's electric.
You like this car, don't you?
I love it.
Why does that not surprise me? What is it that you like about the i-MiEV?
Because it fits my lifestyle.
What lifestyle's that?
I live a few miles from work. I just have the dog and that's it. And I don't drive a lot. And I can charge it at night.
So with a 60-mile range, you really can't go too far. I mean, what if you had to go to the suburbs more or to the city? What would you do?
That's, if I go to the city, then it would be the train or something like that. Or make sure that I have a place to go to charge it long term. But yeah, that would be a huge concern.
I think there's a lot of trade-offs with this car, and a lot of it has to do with, I can live with some of this city car feel and size, but I couldn't live with this range. I think most people in America, especially in the burbs where you you know, if you live in the suburbs, it takes you 20 minutes to get to anywhere that you need to go. You're always driving.
It depends. Like, when I go out, I make sure that it's like 3 or 4 stops and it's on the way to something. You have to plan. That's all it is. You can't be stupid about your miles. You know, you really got to count your miles like you count your calories.
Americans don't want to do that.
I know. It's not practical for an American person, I guess. I don't know.
But you kind of have this favoritism or this old, like, warm and fuzzy feeling about Mitsubishi anyway, because you used to own one, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a Mirage. I loved it.
So this kind of probably brings back some of those feelings of that compact, that small car feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's just practical. For one person, it's practical. You see people with, like, these huge SUVs or huge trucks, and it's one person in the car. It's like, I don't know. I hate seeing that, especially in the suburbs.
I mean, that's always the way it is. I mean, back in the 2000s when SUVs really started to pick up in size, you know, you had the Ford Excursion and some of these just gargantuan SUVs that it was always one person commuting in them. That doesn't make sense. But people in this country have an obsession with larger vehicles. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of larger vehicles. This takes it to the other extreme. I don't know that I could, like I said, I could live with some of the interior quirks of this car, but just the range sucks. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to fit for a family of 4 or anything like that.
Get out of the road, squirrel. I owned a Mitsubishi, too.
Yeah, okay.
Mitsubishi Diamante.
Oh.
It was above the Galant.
I was just going to say, okay.
Yeah, it was above the Galant. It was more their Lexus, you know, competition, like an ES300 back in the day. I actually really, really liked the interior of that car. It was amazing. Now, unfortunately, like a lot of Mitsubishis at the time, it had the 3-liter motor, which was notorious for essentially burning so much oil that I had a gallon jug of oil in my trunk that I would keep with.
Car,
yeah, every time I took a road trip, I'd have to fill up like 3 quarts. I mean, it was just pathetic. Blew the trans on it twice. Total junk. But there's a lot of good things about it at the same time in terms of, you know, interior. So, you know, I do have a fondness for the Mitsubishi as a brand, but this car...
It's not bad. Like, it's very simple.
It is.
And that's what they're going for.
There's no BS in here. But at the same time, when you're paying this kind of money for a car like this, it's like... There is no thought here to ergonomics. There's no thought of where they put stuff.
Yeah, the big thing was the armrest for me when I drove it. And, I mean, I'm pretty petite, so... I didn't have trouble, like, sitting in it or adjusting seats and all that. Yeah.
It has, you know, handling. It is rear-wheel drive. The motor's in the back, so that has that going for it. But, you know, you're on bicycle tires, so you're not going to get any overall grip. You can carry momentum. Let's take this through the turns here.
Oh, jeez. Everything flies.
I mean, it's... You know, since it's electric powered, you have the torque. You have pretty good power overall, and the regenerative braking in this car is really strong. I mean, you take your foot off the gas, and the car just stops without even hitting the brakes.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, like, driving stick.
Oh, yeah, it's like engine braking, but even more extreme.
Yeah.
Most of the people that are going to be buying this are going to be driving for efficiency, and that's how I've driven it.
And they're just environmentally aware. That's what people that are going to buy this car want. You know, they're not going to be here looking for special buttons and things. Like, they're just, you know, if they can't get on a bike to the location they want to, they're going to drive. So,
but would you want to spend $25,000 for a car that handicaps you in so many different ways? I take cars back on this section because the pavement is choppy.
Yeah,
and like
you
this
can tell.
This is a good example of just how shitty the ride quality is in here. It doesn't dampen any bump. It feels like the whole car is twisting and shaking every time you hit something.
What if you swap out the tires, like winter tires and stuff?
That would probably make it softer, but the problem is you have really narrow tires on the car for less low. You know, the narrower tires you put on a car, the less rolling resistance you have. That's the formula. But you know, you trade off overall grip and ride quality with that. But that's what you want here. You don't want sticky tires chewing, creating drag.
Yeah.
But, you do feel it in the overall ride. It's just such shit. That's one of the things about electric cars, you know, even in this is kind of not a good car at all, but the electric power, when you drive an electric car, you realize how much potential is there in terms of just smoothness and simplicity. I mean, you always feel like you're going in this thing, even though it's slow as hell. There's so much torque available all the time, and there's the quietness, the smoothness of it. I would really love an affordable, well put together electric car. Definitely. I mean, the suspension is just such garbage. I mean, it cannot handle anything that's... The past few vehicles I've gotten out of, actually more like the past 5 to 10 vehicles, I think manufacturers have gotten so good that it's hard to complain about a lot of the stuff on the inside anymore. The choice of materials, ergonomics is excellent. Then you get inside the i-MiEV, and you realize this feels like something that should be $6,000 brand new. And I'm not kidding you. This reminds me of like my '89 Ford Festiva. The switches, the buttons, they make no sense in the location. There's no door armrest. Well, there would be if you were 3 feet tall. There's no center armrest. The overall comfort level is just pretty bad. The steering wheel doesn't adjust at all. So you actually have to move your seat up to get in alignment with the steering wheel. And it just doesn't end there. You're probably thinking right now, come on, Felipe, you're just being sensationalistic. And I'm telling you, I'm not. The seat heater switches for the driver's side, it's buried by your left knee. You might wonder, hey, where would they stick the passenger side one? Well, it's under the dash towards the middle of the center console. You need a treasure map to get to it. There's so many just arbitrary decisions in here that seem to be just stuck together for no reason. You know, I got in a little bit of a tussle with Turbowski about the Kia Soul EV, about the price point being too high. But let me tell you, getting out of the Kia Soul, that car was like a Bentley compared to the i-MiEV. Now, the big deal here is this is $25,000 if you opt for this high-end navigation unit. And at 25 grand, if you're not getting a tax break, it makes almost no sense for what this is given the range and the interior quality. I was at the gas station the other day getting a foot-long wiener in my mouth, and I met this guy. His name was Donald. He told me to call him Donnie for short. And he said, you know, is there anything redeeming about this interior? I mean, are you getting the cargo capacity one would lust for in a vehicle like this? And I said, no, you're not. You're getting one cup holder. Your door pockets are childlike. You might be able to fit a brochure to a mattress store. The back seats are quite small. The front seats are small. You have not a lot of shoulder room. This is not a car, even though they've widened it for American standards. It's just a small city car. That's its best suit. Now, the back seat in the cargo area with the seats folded down is surprisingly spacious. In fact, that makes the most sense about this car. If you're going to drive it around, you're just going to drive it around with the back seats, because I can fit all my gear in here, my 4-foot extension poles, my pole vaulting set, my gym suit. There's some other stuff that I bought too for my costume parties that I do with Turbowski. We like to dress up and go to White Castle and just kind of simulate what a marriage would be like. So there are some things you can do here. You might be wondering, well, is there anything redeeming? Well, aside from the cargo capacity, which is exemplary, this infotainment head unit, rather, that you're going to opt for with the ES model, the sound quality, the sound system in here is surprisingly good, because this car has about no sound insulation, no sound deadening. You hear all the road noise. It's just kind of a rattle trap, but the sound system makes up for a lot of that. You turn it up, you got good EQ settings. It is kind of the silver lining in here. One of the things that makes it a little bit more enjoyable to spend some time. So I've been kind of down on the i-MiEV from interior, exterior, drivability, and overall range. Now I understand this is an old platform, so I'll make that excuse for it. But I don't want you to think I'm down on electric vehicles at all, because I strongly believe in them. And I think OEMs, manufacturers, and tech companies especially should be pouring money into battery development. That's what's holding this all back. Now, in the case of Mitsubishi, it just makes me think they've kind of don't have a direction for the American market. This vehicle is totally lost in translation from the Japanese market to here. And there's the other vehicles in their lineup have this similar taste and flavor. I hope that they can take this and improve upon it.